You are listening to the Unglamorous Life. I'm Celeste.
I'm Laurin, and we are talking about how relationships are portrayed in the public eye.
Well, in the public eye can mean a lot of things. It's social media, it's, celebrities, what they put out on, I guess, paparazzi type stuff, how they want to be portrayed. I guess paparazzi doesn't really give you that much of an option. They kind of just
do whatever they want.
Take your picture when you're like tanning naked and without your consent. But that's that's a different topic. I guess what we really wanted to focus on today is how relationships and how they're portrayed like on social media and how a lot of it is not real. And this was like a super important topic for me specifically because I went through a divorce this year, and a lot of moments that were pivotal in our life, that were successful moments that I had accomplished, with my husband, behind the scenes, things were really ugly and not right. But we put on a face for social media because that's what we thought we should do. And we wanted to be this perfect power couple. And that's just not how it was.
Dude, it's so crazy. Like, I had no idea. And like, I even knew you guys, like, personally. Mm-hmm. And at the time, like, we've gotten closer now, but I still knew you guys and I had absolutely no idea. And like, when you just see one thing, you honestly believe that it's true because that's what people put out all the time, like over and over and over again every week. You think that everything must be fine.
Right. And it's unhealthy. It's unhealthy for two reasons. It's unhealthy for the people doing it, for, the couple A, putting out these posts about, oh, how much in love you are, or, how perfect things are in your life. And you're kind of, when you continue to put stuff out like that, you almost kind of start to believe your own bullshit, if that makes sense. And so you're almost like kind of avoiding like the real issues, like the real things that are going on behind the scenes in your real life. And it's like, you start believing, okay, yeah, no, I live this highlight reel. This is how things are great. Like, I'm a great significant other or spouse or husband or wife or whatever. And it's this weird thing that social media has done to us. And I remember a couple of times specifically that were super pivotal moments, whether they were, photo shoots for a magazine cover or like just a big event where we had to have this face on that, we were happy and this super power couple and we were, taking over the world. And in reality, it was the complete opposite. We were kind of falling apart and crumbling, and it's so hard to just kind of push all that deep down way back in there and to just put on a front. And I think it's unhealthy in another aspect for other people to think that you could be so perfect and you could be so happy.
I think that's the biggest problem. And like, that's one of the things we want to talk about, like what is normal. And I think that a lot of people for social media like to pretend that everything is always great. And that's, again, part of why we wanted to do this whole podcast, right? And the relationship thing kind of ties into it. But normal couples like have ups and downs. Like as a person, like you're going to have ups and downs. So then when you are with somebody else, like you're going to have them with that person too. Like, that person has theirs, you have yours, you have them together. And that's just normal. Like, especially if you have like strong personalities, which we both have, putting it mildly. And so you're going to have ups and downs. Like you're going to have arguments and not everything is going to be great 24/7. Now, understandably, I'm not going to post about that all the time. Like, oh man, me and Ryan got in a serious fight. Like if I posted about that, that'd be weird. Like, okay, nobody cares, dude.
Yeah,
right?
It's a little intrusive into your own life.
Yeah, like we can talk about that later, but like we just don't really like do that, like me and Ryan. But so I get why people don't do it because it's kind of like weird. Like you don't want to make a post like, oh, got in a huge fight today. Like,
yeah,
like that's not
Ryan's such a dick.
like you're not gonna like post about that on your Instagram.
So it's oversharing.
It's oversharing. So you want to share the positive stuff and kind of mask any kind of negatives. Like, oh no, it's fine. Like looking at it like in hindsight, right? So I totally get why people don't want to share negatives because that's weird, and that seems like you don't want to be that person like on Facebook, right, who's like always bitching and complaining about stuff,
Right.
because there's nothing like weirder than rating a status like that or something and you're like, what the fuck,
It's like, do I like this? Do I,
You're
yeah,
like,
do
dude,
I have to
yeah,
like this?
like,
Or
what?
how do I feel about this?
So basically just like acknowledging that like there are ups and downs. It's going to be challenging. Like any relationship is hard. I don't know anyone in like real life who doesn't have like some kind of work put into their relationship. Right. So I think that that's just really like the important part to like know that that is normal. And what you are going to see on social media is most likely going to be like the highlight reel or the positive stuff again, because it's kind of weird to share otherwise.
There's a fine line. There is posting good stuff like, oh, you know, we're in love, or we just did this, or this was like a great day for us, or we bought a house, or whatever it is. That stuff's great. Like obviously celebrate those victories and stuff. But I think after a certain like line that you can cross where it's overkill. Like, oh, our lives are so great. We're this, we're that. Like we're so in love, and like also on on the opposite end, like nobody wants to see that shit either. Like it's like a little repulsive sometimes. But so the people that do kind of do the overkill, I think that puts such a weird idea in some people's heads that that's what their relationship should be like. And if it's not perfect, like what they see on social media or, in the tabloids or whatever, that there's something wrong with them.
Yeah. And there's absolutely like, most people don't live that like crazy, glamorous, like life. Even if you are a celebrity, I'd probably argue that your relationship you probably have different struggles because you're famous.
Yeah.
But so I can't relate even remotely, but you probably still have like your normal ups and downs, like just normal couple shit. And they're not going to, again, talk about that, right? Like,
yeah, everyone's a human. And that's like the most important thing to remember. And then there's also those couples like you and Ryan who have been together for 4 years.
4.5.
4.5 years. And I love being around you guys. Y'all are a fucking riot. And you're like the coolest couple ever. And to me, that's like couple goals. But I know that you guys go through struggles. You've told me about like, first of all, you and Ryan have the most ridiculous fights over the most ridiculous things. Like, I hope if I like plant the seed, you start to talk about the spatula fight.
Okay, listen, bitch. So I have like weird OCD tendencies. And so anyone listening, if you're a female, you're probably going to understand where I'm coming from if you have similar OCD tendencies. So I have a certain spatula that I use for my eggs. And I don't do scrambled eggs. I only do over easy eggs or omelets, which is far less messy than a scrambled egg.
Fair enough.
Everyone can agree. So this was back when we were in undergrad. So we were home, and this was like when we were like first dating too. And he was like using my spatula to like make his like nasty scrambled eggs. And I like, for whatever reason, like blew up. So like for me, when we get in arguments or like I get in arguments with anyone, it's usually like a buildup of things. So it probably like wasn't just the eggs. It probably was like something else that happened that day. And then I got like upset over that. I know I need to work on that. But so I was like freaking out over it, and we were just like yelling and blah, blah, blah. And it was just like, obviously it was like a stupid argument, but like I was genuinely like upset that he was using the spatula, and he was genuinely like upset that I was upset over that. You know what I mean? Like, and then something happened, whatever. And like all the eggs like fell on the floor, which then caused real anger. Because
now he's hungry and all his food's on the goddamn floor
and eggs cracked everywhere, so you can't obviously like pick them up. And then literally, so we're just like going back and forth, and then my roommate, whose like room was right next to the kitchen downstairs, just like opens the door, and she just like walks out, and she was like, "This was the best fight I've ever been a part of." And it was just like we all just like laughed hysterically, like so
like you guys have the best fights. I'm so jealous. Like if I'm gonna have a fight, like I want one like that.
This is so crazy, like saying that out loud. But so yeah, we obviously have like normal arguments about normal things too, not just like stupid egg things.
But you guys have a really, to me, and who am I to talk? But you guys have a really, what seems like a healthy relationship, and I love being around the two of you, to get together as a couple. And you guys actually don't post very much on social media about your relationship.
Yeah, not really like at all. We never really have. When we started dating, I had some social media, but it wasn't as big as it is now. It's escalated like in 4+ years, like so much. And back then, like I was using it like a little bit just because like, oh, other people have this, I should probably do it. But it wasn't like how it is now for me, like part of my business and whatever. So we never really posted that much together. Like occasionally we did, but because back then my Instagram was more just like fun stuff and like whatever. But we never really like posted that much together. We honestly don't take pictures together, which is part of the problem. We like
Why?
literally.
Is there a reason, or is it just
No,
you don't remember and
we
you're
don't
in
remember.
the moment and
We're very like in the moment with stuff, and which is a good quality. Sometimes, and I'm like, oh shit, I wish we would have gotten a fucking picture afterwards. But for the most part, like we just like aren't like super all about like photos all the time. And like if we're together, like we've had a very interesting like off and on like being together. Like we've always been dating, but like as far as like location relationship. So I think like when we're apart, we're just like apart, and then when we're together, we actually like want to be together and not worry about like should I take a picture and like post about you and like it's I think it's just like fueled that too, like added to it.
I think that your like head is in a good place with that because I was very, and I don't know if it's because you just prefer to be a private person when it comes to that, or you just don't think it's like pertinent or necessary to put that, you know, this relationship status on social media. Either way, like whatever your reasoning is, I think I'm very similar in that aspect where, my social media is, you know, my brand. It's me, it's Celeste. And so it kind of is all encompassing everything that's going on in my life because I'd like for people to be able to see that I'm a dynamic person, a dynamic character, if you will. And
You're definitely a character.
I'm a cartoon. And you know, my relationship is only a part of who I am. It isn't everything about who I am. So to me, I put emphasis on different things that I talk about, I post about. And since going through my divorce, I have been a lot more open about my personal struggles, and it hasn't been about anybody else. You know, significantly or romantically involved in my life. It's just been about me and my personal progress. And that's what I feel like if someone follows me, that's why they're following me, because, you know, they care about me as a person, who I am, not about who I'm dating or who I'm married to, or, but I do think every once in a while it's okay to like, okay, you know, oh, let me post a man crush Monday, which I think are so fucking stupid. Or just, you know, if you go out with your significant other and you are dressed fly as fuck, like take a picture, you know. So I condone that stuff, but I'm similar to you to where like I just don't think it's super necessary to be putting out like this overkill of relationship stuff to try to prove, maybe you're trying to prove to yourself that you have a great relationship. I don't know what it is, but I think that there's a line where you kind of don't shove it down people's throats because it's not realistic for them to believe that you are that happy, or there's that much amazing, you have this like Disney marriage or relationship.
Yeah, exactly. And like I think that's part of why we're just I wouldn't say private, because it's not like but we just don't really put our shit out there. Like I don't know, it's just like how we've always been, and like it's never even been like a discussion. It's just been kind of like how we do things.
Yeah.
And it's just normal, and when we're together we enjoy our time together, and like yeah, like we'll take pictures, and like if it's a certain thing, like of course like we'll post about that, but it's not like the whole part of what my social media is about. It's one part of it, right? So I think some people, like you said, it does become like kind of overkill. Mm-hmm. And maybe they're trying to prove something, I don't know, or maybe that is what they want their brand to be. Like maybe that's what they want, like okay, I want this fairy tale marriage. And sometimes it might be true, but there's plenty of times where like there's people who are like that, and then you find out like, oh, this person was cheating on so and so anyway, and or whatever, and then you're like, wait, what? Like what the fuck?
Yeah.
And or you know, so there's always like other layers, and then same way, like just because me and Ryan don't post all the time doesn't mean that our relationship isn't great. So I think that it just depends on like your style, what you want to do, but the main takeaway from all this is don't look at other people's stuff and compare your relationship, right? Because every single person's relationship is different, and social media is just a tool to post about some of it on there. It doesn't have to be the entire
it's not to overkill. And another thing is, not to be completely off topic, but when it comes down to, you know, say the relationship ends, and you have any type of platform on social media or anywhere else, it's so not unfair, but just it's not the right thing to do to talk about your significant other in a negative light, because it's not, it only, first of all, it only makes you look bad. It's, it's you going on sharing all this, oversharing again, but in a different way, about negatives about, the person that you were with. And when you're in a relationship, you're really close with somebody. So you let your guard down, and you let, people know things about you that maybe you wouldn't share with the public or whatever. And then, whoever you were with or intimate with or married to or whatever, goes online and says things about you that are extremely personal. It's such a an invasion of privacy, and such a shitty thing to do. And you see that a lot.
Yeah, that's like terrible. I don't know how people do that. I would be so upset if that happened. And I don't think that, I don't know, I think that's just like a not good relationship, obviously. But like if that happened, like me and Ryan wouldn't do that. You know what I mean? Like I wouldn't even feel the need to do that. Like I
almost feel like it's the people that put out this idea of this perfect relationship out on social media or however they portray it. And then, once it ends or goes wrong, then they turn around and, completely speak the other way about the person. And it makes them look like not a good person, and it makes them kind of like, okay, so you were posting all this stuff about how great and how perfect your life was with your significant other, and now
what? Like, was that all a lie? Like, how can we trust you at all?
Yeah,
like,
it's like, how are you credible, or why do we want to listen to you for anything? And that's, for people that have big platforms and stuff, like, you just have to use them wisely.
I think also too, to kind of piggyback off of that, when you do have a big platform and you do have a boyfriend or a husband or vice versa, whatever, and you guys break up, then I see this all the time. Like, say such and such breaks up, and then in the comments of like every picture that's like has nothing to do with them, it's like, what happened to so and so? What happened to so and so? And it's like, oh my gosh, I would seriously be so frustrated if people continuously did that. Like, why would you ask someone, like, what happened to so-and-so? Obviously, they're not together anymore, or some shit's going on. Like, that's super personal. Like, why the fuck would you ask that? Like, it's so frustrating to me. But
it is, you know what? It is so frustrating, but then it's also like, you know this, people feel like they know you just based on your social media. So it's like, they almost have this weird, like,
desire to know. Like, I guess I get it. You know what I mean? When you, like, I guess the difference is if that happens, I'm like, oh, I wonder where so-and-so is. Did they break up? Are they going through something? I just wouldn't go and comment. I would wonder, and then I would just move on with my day. Like, it wouldn't be that big of a deal. And I wouldn't be like so dying of curiosity that I would have to ask something that's obviously uncomfortable for the person to talk about. If they want to post about it, then they'll just, then they will. Which is also weird too. Like I can understand how weird that would be. So I guess there's really like no right or wrong way to do that. But if you're somebody like wondering, like, just remember, like, people like actually have feelings and stuff on social media. And like, even if they have a high profile relationship, like asking what happened to the other person is like kind of rude, just because
it might be a sensitive.
It's like obviously like they just broke up. Like, what if that was the person that got broken up with? Like, what are they going to say? Oh, fuck me, just got broken up with. Like, like that, like that.
God damn it, not again.
So I feel like it's just kind of shit either way.
I know for me, so most of my following started with my following from wrestling. So that was like my platform on like Instagram and Twitter, and it was all like my wrestling fans. And so they knew me as Caitlyn, the character. And then I was so hesitant to do it, but I was happy. Like, I had gotten engaged and I was still wrestling, and it was like, it was big news for me. And first of all, I never thought I'd get married, and I never will again. No, I don't know. But so I posted about, like, oh, I got engaged, and I didn't post anything about, who I was getting engaged to. I kind of wanted to like slowly put that out there. But my wrestling fans were so like intrusive and just like, who is this guy? Like, blah, blah, blah. And then I left wrestling a few months after that. And so, it was hard for me to post stuff about him because like the fans I had from wrestling would like tear him apart because they blamed him for me leaving wrestling, right? So it was this like really weird, slow transition for me to start incorporating him into my social media posts or to share with people like what was going on in my life. Because, I had retired from wrestling and I was building this company, and he was a part of me, building, and structuring this company. So it was hard to not talk about it, but I had to almost like slowly introduce him and like not throw it in everybody's face immediately, because they would have torn him apart on social media, which they kind of did anyways. And I felt bad, but it's just how my fans were reacting. And then eventually once we got married and, I had transitioned away from the WWE stuff mostly, and I had more of like a fitness based following. It was like a little bit easier to make a post here and there about him or us or whatever, instead of getting a ton of like questions or hate or whatever it was. But it was always really weird. And then, fast forward 3 years later, when I started going through the process of my divorce, to me, it was extremely personal. And I didn't like on there like, hey, we're getting a divorce. There were some things that happened that were, because we were not in a good place. Obviously, we were getting a divorce, so things were kind of like hostile. So there were some certain things that went up on social media that kind of put it out there that we were like splitting or separating and stuff. But I still never like came out and said like, hey, here's why I'm getting divorced and here's all the shit I'm going through and stuff, because that was like way too personal. And also, I didn't want people to shit all over him for whatever reason. And it was just like a really weird thing to go through, especially if you're like a little bit in the public eye. And I now openly talk about the fact that I got a divorce and my personal changes, but I never talk about him in a negative light on social media, because there's no point.
There's no point. Like, that's not going to make anything better. It's not going to change. It's not going to change anything of like the past or the future, whatever. So I think the overarching theme here is don't look at social media as this perfect portrayal of somebody's relationship. Like, you never really know what's going on. And honestly, just don't compare yourself to people on social media or in the public eye, right? Like, couple goals, like I get why everyone like does that. And like, if you see a couple that like you really like together, but you really have no idea what's going on underneath. So if you compare yourself like, oh, I wish I was like so-and-so, then that can be really dangerous. So just know, you guys, that there's always a lot going on, and there's definitely an unglamorous side to putting your relationship on social media.
Absolutely. Thank you for listening to The Unglamorous Life.
Please subscribe to the podcast and leave us any feedback.
Go to celestialbodies.com
and laurinconlin.com.
And remember, life is unglamorous.
Hey now, baby, where have you gone? I'm looking in places, but I keep guessing wrong. Is this